Hello, everyone. Today, we will be presenting on a student-led Indigenous language collaboration, the successes and challenges of a Maya Quiche conversation group. My name is Polly Lauer, and I am a PhD candidate in the History Department at Yale University. My dissertation focuses on the history of the first Quiche language radio station in Guatemala.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Taylor, and I am also a history PhD candidate, although at UNC Chapel Hill. And we are thrilled to be with you here today and continue our conversation over Zoom in a bit. Polly and I are going to be speaking about our conversation, our Quiche conversation group. I'm going to first give a bit of a history and context of Maya language learning and the group itself. And then Polly will continue with a bit of how our group works and what are some of our successes and challenges have been up to date. So I wanted to begin by giving some of the historical antecedents of Maya language education in Guatemala and Maya language activism in Guatemala. As you can see here, this is the map of the 22 Maya languages that are spoken in Guatemala, as well as Xinca and Garifuna, in addition to Spanish. The largest ethno-linguistic groups in the country are Quiche, Quechua, and Mam. And many indigenous people, especially through the mid-20th century, did not speak Spanish or did so as a second language. There's widespread discrimination against the indigenous majority, who have been systematically excluded from political and economic power since the colonial period. Maya Quiche is one of the most common indigenous languages in Guatemala, with over 1 million speakers. However, in recent generations, there has been significant language loss due to the country's genocidal armed conflict between 1960 and 1996, and longer processes of cultural erasure that stem from the colonial period. Efforts at Maya language academic study and revitalization began in the mid-20th century, although religious groups began creating bilingual vocabularies during the colonial era as part of evangelizing efforts. Maya cultural and linguistic activism, however, flourished in the aftermath of the genocide in the early 1980s, and a loose coalition of Maya cultural activists, U.S. academics, and religious evangelizers formed to promote Maya language education by the mid-1990s. While these efforts succeeded in the creation of the Academia de Lenguas Mayas de Guatemala and the passage of a law mandating bilingual education throughout the country, the initiative as a whole continues to confront entrenched societal racism and limited educational funding. So that's a little bit of the larger historical context of our project. So now I'm going to talk about the history of our project itself. So the group arose out of the conditions created by the COVID-19 pandemic. Polly and I met in the summer of 2020 during the online Maya Language Institute, which is a 6-week intensive for Quiche learners in U.S. Institutions of higher education. It was here that we first glimpsed the potential that teleconferencing brings to language learning efforts. However, the roots of this initiative really go back to the summer of 2019, when I participated in the in-person iteration of the Quiche program with Maya Language Institute founder, Manuel de Jesus Tejada Gomez. After that summer, I witnessed and experienced the difficulty that participants faced practicing and maintaining language skills that had been gained throughout the summer. After my second year in the program, I was again faced with the question of how to maintain these skills. And Zoom offered the opportunity to continue building our language skills even when we were physically unable to travel to Guatemala and we were no longer enrolled in courses. It allowed teachers from Guatemala and learners based in regions of the United States and Canada to convene and continue working together. And so you can see that this initiative was a collaboration between not only the Maya Language Institute, but our funders, which is the Duke Center for Caribbean and Latin American Studies for CLACS. And so I think not only in addition to being a successful language initiative, it also is a successful example of interinstitutional collaboration. So now that we have a little bit more of the historical context of our program, Polly is going to talk about how it works and some of our successes and challenges.
Hi, everyone. So like Emily said, I'm going to walk us through sort of the model that we follow for this Quiche Conversation Group program. I'll talk about the role of cultural exchange in our conversation group, and then some of the successes and challenges. And Emily will round out the presentation by talking about lessons learned from our 3 years of doing this. So first of all, to talk about kind of the nuts and bolts of our conversation group, we meet during 2 semesters each academic year, the fall semester and the spring semester. Each semester is a 10-week program, and we meet for 1 hour each week. As of this semester, we're doing noon to 1 Guatemala time on Wednesdays. And the planning really begins at the beginning of each semester. So that's August or January. And that is when we start liaising with our funders at Duke. Again, we are very grateful for their support, and then start sort of circulating information about the group. So we reach out to Latin American Studies centers, to Quiche teachers, and to folks who we know are interested. And our group, like Emily said, is composed of all sorts of different folks. We have learners coming from the US and Canada, and this includes undergraduates, graduate students, faculty, and just interested individuals who may not be affiliated with an institution. And then we also convene with teachers from a Quiche community in Highland, Guatemala, who are also affiliated with the Maya Language Institute based at Tulane. And so at the beginning of each semester, the first meeting, we set up that we make it clear that we want students to be facilitating the semester as we go on. So what that really means is that each week, a different participant will be leading the meeting. And so they will select a theme and then design a lesson plan accordingly. And these lesson plans vary week to week, but sort of the general structure is we have a warm-up, a vocabulary lesson that revolves around the theme the student has chosen. So for example, on the screen right now, you can see the vocabulary from a week about painting. Then we'll go into a brief grammar lesson, and then we'll hear a short presentation from our Quiche teacher in Highland, Guatemala, related to the theme of that week. So for example, the week that we had this painting lesson, she talked about a cooperative of painters who paint masks in her town. We'll then do a short Q&A where we we see what students' comprehension was. We'll revisit any topics that were challenging, any new vocabulary, any new grammar that we heard during the short presentation. And then if there's time, we'll end with a game. And this system we have found has worked from beginning to advanced learners. Unfortunately, we can't have learners starting from 0, but we have students who are still in the beginner level, are still kind of working out how this language works. And then we have folks who are really advanced and almost completely fluent. And we have found that, even despite the discrepancy in skill levels between the students, that having rotating facilitation allows us to distribute the work evenly, helps students improve their language skills, because when you put in the time to think through how to teach grammar, thinking through where to find the vocabulary, how the vocabulary relates to itself, students strengthen their own language. And we are really dedicated to this space being non-judgmental and supportive. We do not do assessments. We are not focused on the nitty-gritty of grammar. Of course, we're reviewing grammar and we're always helping each other along, but this is really about building conversational skills and building comfort with the language. We want this to be a space where students are excited to practice and to participate, no matter their level. And so ultimately, we view this as a place where we have democratized the classroom. We have divided the labor equally among our participants. So while we have a teacher who is Quiche and is coming from the Highlands, she is not required to set up a lesson plan each week for us. It is us who is doing that work. And then she helps us along thinking about different themes coming from her community. And likewise, this does not create any extra work for any single individual in the group who's responsible for coordinating an entire semester of lessons. Instead, it creates a friendly place where people are able to explore their interests together. And most importantly, we are really excited that this is a place of cultural exchange. This learning model, again, is not focused on the linguistics and the nitty-gritty. It's focused on the Quiche community where our teacher is based. And we are really interested in having reciprocity in that. We are interested in learning about cultural nuances and specificities of her municipality. And likewise, we are then returning that information, talking about our own backgrounds, our own communities, our own interests, and expressing that information in Quiche. So to talk a little bit about the successes and challenges of this program over the past 3 years, successes is we are so proud that we are part of this ongoing transnational learning community. This is not something that goes from May to June and then is over. This is something that is running throughout the year. People can come in and out as they like, and we are able to see our friends every week who are in the US, Canada, and Guatemala. And likewise, we have really built confidence in conversational speaking. I know for myself personally, I am so much happier and at ease when I speak Quiche now, thanks to the work we have done over the past 3 years in this group. And it really has come from the fact that I feel comfortable in front of my peers. I feel comfortable with my teacher because I know that everyone is just really excited about our mutual commitment to this language. And then finally, this has allowed us to maintain our relationship with our Quiche teachers throughout the academic year. And most importantly, it allows us to give them some economic support. And 100% of the funds from Duke go straight to our teacher. That is entirely for her to acknowledge the work and skills that she has. In terms of challenges, with every program, there are always some challenges. So the first has been maintaining participant numbers, particularly as we have returned to in-person activities in the wake of kind of the height of the pandemic. Folks have more responsibilities, particularly in their institutions, to return to in-person teaching. People also have Zoom fatigue. So this has involved us having to do more one-on-one communication with participants, saying, checking in, are you going to be participating this semester? Do you have ideas of folks who might want to participate? Working with Latin American studies centers, working with faculty to try and keep our numbers up. Secondly, ensuring there is always a facilitator was a big challenge we faced at the beginning of running this. And, at the beginning, we were kind of, every few weeks we check in and say, who wants to do the next few weeks? And we've now learned it's best at the beginning of the semester to create a timetable and have the participants who show up at that first meeting fill out the entire semester so we know going in that we have the whole semester covered. Thirdly, institutional support. As I have now said 3 times, we are so grateful to Duke for its support, but that funding is contingent on having a member of Duke's community in the program. So long-term, we are concerned about how do we maintain the support, what institutions are capable of providing funding to a non-US citizen who is not based in the US. And so that is something we're looking towards down the road. And then finally, another thing we're looking towards down the road is the long-term planning for this program. As of right now, the planning has fallen largely on the folks who are currently involved, and that has been, specific individuals have worked at the beginning of each semester to do that reach out and that liaising with Duke to make sure there is funding. But long-term, we want to make sure that there are future generations who are able to keep this really beautiful community going, even as we move on and graduate from graduate school. And of course, we hope to continue participating, but we hope that there are more folks who will come in the future and be able to do presentations like this to groups like you.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Polly, for talking about kind of these challenges and successes. And I think we've really learned a lot from these last 3 years of classes. I think one of the more important lessons we've learned is the importance of locally grounded learning. This is really an exchange that we work together with our Quiche teacher, and we work together to come up with these themes, and we really aren't just talking about like these themes that are important to US based people. We are also thinking about how are we reflecting Guatemala values? How are we reflecting Quiche worldviews in our lessons and in our choice of themes. And I think this initiative also reaffirms the efficacy of alternative pedagogies. We know that students learn best when they're given the opportunity to design and implement lessons, which allows them to think differently and collaboratively. We obviously both come from like more formal grammatic, linguistic-based background, but we think that this also reaffirms this alternative pedagogy as another way of continuing language learning. And finally, I think that the most important thing we've learned from this is, this community that we've built, where we've now been together for more than 3 years now, every week checking in. We've gone through some really, difficult times together. And we've also gone through, the graduation of different members. We've gone through members going onto the tenure track, which is really exciting in the life of a graduate student and really in the life of like a personal life of each person. And so I think that the community is really at the heart of what we've done. And it's something that I am really, really proud of and really excited to be able to continue over the next semesters and years as we continue our initiative. So finally,
Matios Chiwech.
Muchas gracias. Questions can be directed to me or Polly. Here are our email addresses, and we look forward to continuing this conversation live on Thursday. Thank you so much.
And then finally, one quick thank you to Brian Jennings for all the coordination that has gone into this conference, and a thank you to Hannah Palmer, who encouraged us to participate, and also for all her support for this conversation group and for Maya language education more broadly. Thank you so much, and we're looking forward to our conversation.